most consecutive international wins. You probably didn't expect Cyprus to pop up in a conversation about rugby dominance, but here they are, sitting on a throne built on 24 straight wins. That's right, between 2008 and 2014, the Cypriot national team, also known as the Mighty Mouflons, which honestly sounds like a cartoon superhero group, went on a 24-win run no one saw coming. Now, you'd expect that kind of winning run from, say, New Zealand or South Africa, but nope. It was this tiny Mediterranean island that steamrolled everyone in their path. And sure, you might argue, well, they weren't playing the top dogs. Fair enough. But here's the thing. Consistency is brutal. It doesn't matter if you're facing Belgium or Bulgaria. Winning 24 games in a row is absolutely ridiculous. Rugby is messy. Injuries pile up. Games are physical. Ref decisions go weird. And still, Cyprus kept things running like a well-oiled machine. To give you some context, even the mighty All Blacks only managed to hit 18 wins in a row at their peak. England's golden run was also 18. Not even Richie McCaw and friends could match Cyprus on this one, so whether you like it or not, Cyprus has done the unthinkable. Records don't come with disclaimers. A win is a win, and 24 in a row is something legends dream about. Cyprus was so dominant in their tier that World Rugby didn't know what to do with them. Promotion was tricky, politics got weird, funding was limited, and all of that meant they never really got a shot at facing the big boys. But on paper, that 24-game streak stands tall and proud. Even Guinness World Records gave them a round of applause. That's how legit this run was. And the streak didn't end in some fiery crash either. Nope. They went down in the most painful way possible. A 1-point loss to Latvia. Yep, after 6 years of winning everything, they slipped on a banana peel at the finish line. But that's sports for you. It's brutal and brilliant at the same time. So now, every time someone talks about long winning runs in rugby, you can hit them with the wildest pub quiz answer ever. Cyprus. Yes, Cyprus. Not New Zealand, not South Africa, just a bunch of mighty Mouflons writing their own unlikely fairy tale in rugby history. So, will someone break it someday? Maybe, but they better pack snacks, patience, and a whole lot of luck. Most losses. Now let's take a moment for Sergio Parisse. Not out of pity, but out of sheer respect. The man racked up 142 caps for Italy and somehow managed to lose 106 of them. Yes, 106. That's not a stat. That's a life journey. You may think, why would anyone keep going after losing that much? Well, that's the part that makes Parisse such a rugby legend. Most players would have retired long before the losses hit triple digits, but not Parisse. He stuck around, played his heart out, captained his side with pride, and kept walking out onto the pitch even when the scoreboard kept smacking him in the face. And to be clear, this wasn't because he was bad. Quite the opposite. Sergio Parisse was probably one of the most technically gifted number 8s of his generation. You put him in a top-tier team like New Zealand or England and he'd be collecting trophies instead of bruises. But he stayed loyal to Italy through the thick, the thin, and the absolutely miserable Six Nations campaigns. Italy's rise in the Six Nations didn't exactly go to plan. They've been wooden spoon collectors more often than not, and Parisse was front and centre for almost every one of those painful journeys. Still, he never gave up. No tantrums, no ducking games, just pure rugby stubbornness. And it wasn't all doom and gloom. There were those rare, glorious days where Italy pulled off an upset, like that wild win against France in 2011 or the shocker versus South Africa in 2016. The flair. Classy offloads, clever kicks, and ridiculous line-out work, and the man was a full package, and he wasn't just there to make up the numbers. He carried Italy, sometimes quite literally, for almost 2 decades. To be fair, this record is probably going to be untouched for a long time, because for anyone to lose that much, they'd have to play forever. And in today's rugby scene, with all the player rotation, burnout, injuries, and mental health focus, that's nearly impossible. So while most people remember careers by the number of wins or tries scored, Parisse's legacy is different. He turned losing into a kind of art form, a painful, emotional, but somehow beautiful art, and that's not something you see every day. He wore defeat like armour and showed the world that resilience is just as powerful as victory. Most drop goals in a game. Moving on to the drop goal. The most misunderstood move in modern rugby. Most fans today see it as a last resort, something you do when you're bored of running into massive humans. But back in 1999, Jan-Hendrik de Beer made it look like magic. It was the Rugby World Cup quarter-final, England versus South Africa, big stage, big pressure, and Janny de Beer decides he's not going to run or pass it. Nope. He decided to casually slot 5 drop goals like he's just out there practicing in his backyard. Not 1, but 5. England didn't know what hit them. It was like death by paper cuts. You're defending hard, sweating buckets, thinking you've shut them down, then boom, Another drop goal. He did it from everywhere, left, right, centre. He probably could have done one blindfolded too. That match ended 44-21 in South Africa's favour, and it left England completely rattled. Johnny Wilkinson was probably watching from the stands thinking, all right, guess I need to add that to my game. And boy, did he ever. But even Wilkinson, king of the drop goal himself, never managed 5 in one game. Now, in the age of power plays and wide-running rugby, drop goals have become very rare. Most teams go for the try or draw a penalty, and coaches would rather take a risk on the ground than aim for the sticks unless it's a final or they're in a panic. And let's not forget, you can't just casually slot 5 drop goals. It takes vision, positioning, ridiculous timing, and a defence that gives you just enough breathing room. That combo is not easy to find in modern rugby. Defences today are faster, tighter, and have GPS-level tracking of every movement. If you blink, they're on you like white on rice. That's exactly why this record is so safe. You'd need a game where one guy gets total freedom, a golden boot, and a defence that's just slightly out of position 5 times. And that's not going to happen again anytime soon. So Gianni De Beer didn't just beat England, he drop-kicked them into a confused existential crisis. And honestly, 5 in a single World Cup knockout game isn't just showing off. That's rugby mischief at its finest. Highest ever attendance now. Get ready to feel claustrophobic. It's the year 2000. People are still using dial-up internet. Nokia ringtones are peak technology, and nobody has even whispered the word TikTok yet. But on July 15th, over 109,000 people decided the only thing worth doing that day was cramming themselves into Stadium Australia for a rugby match. But not just any match. This was the Bledisloe Cup, Australia versus New Zealand, the rivalry that makes polite neighbours throw punches. Stadium Australia had been built for the Sydney Olympics, which made it huge, like Colosseum level huge. But even then, nobody really expected it to be packed out for a rugby game. Well, it was. People didn't just fill the seats. They filled every crevice of that stadium like it was the final round of a mosh pit contest. There was literally no legroom and no breathing space, but the fans didn't care. The match itself was absolute chaos. New Zealand came in like a wrecking ball and slapped 24 points on the board in the first 10 minutes. Yes, 10. It looked like the All Blacks were playing against traffic cones. The Wallabies were rattled. The crowd was rattled. Even the cameramen looked like they wanted a break. But then somehow the Wallabies decided to stop being polite hosts and launched one of the best comebacks the sport has ever seen. They came roaring back, scoring 35 points and nearly pulling off the mother of all turnarounds. The final score was 39-35 to New Zealand. But everyone watching knew they'd just seen something legendary. Jonah Lomu was doing Jonah Lomu things, Christian Cullen was slicing through gaps like a ninja with a GPS, and George Gregan was bossing it in the middle like the captain of chaos. This wasn't just a rugby match, it was an 80-minute action movie. Now let's be honest, with today's stadium restrictions, tighter safety codes, and people preferring to scream at a 75-inch TV from their couch, this kind of attendance number is never happening again. Even Twickenham or the Millennium Stadium couldn't pull this off without duct taping fans to the roof. So yeah, unless someone builds a mega stadium inside a wormhole, 109,874 is probably staying in the record books forever. It was a perfect storm of hype, rivalry, and pure madness. If you weren't there, you didn't just miss a match, you missed a piece of rugby history. Fastest World Cup hat-trick. Hat-tricks in rugby are like unicorns. They are rare, magical, and usually involve a bit of luck and a lot of sweat. But then along came Cobus Reinach in 2019, who decided to make it look like child's play. Playing against Canada in the Rugby World Cup, he didn't just score a hat-trick, he basically turned the match into his personal highlight reel. And he did it in just 11 minutes. Yeah, 11 minutes. You probably can't even microwave a frozen pizza in that time. But Reinach was already 3 tries deep before Canada had finished singing their anthem. He played like someone was double parked outside and he needed to finish early. It was quick, it was clinical, and it was honestly a little bit rude. Reinach wasn't just in the right place at the right time, he was everywhere. 1 minute he's diving over the line, the next he's slicing through defenders like they're traffic cones at a kid's sports day. Line breaks, support runs, and cheeky snipes around the ruck. The guy was unstoppable. Even the cameraman got caught lagging behind on one of those tries. It was rugby in fast forward. And to put this into perspective, the previous record was held by Chris Latham with a 25-minute hat-trick. Reinach pretty much halved that. It was so fast, the stat sheets barely had time to catch up. You'd think maybe Canada was just having a bad day, but nah. Reinach was just on a completely different wavelength. So, why is this record unbreakable? For starters, World Cup matches are high-stakes chess matches these days. Defences are tighter than a miser's wallet. Everyone's fit, focused, and prepped to the eyeballs. Teams don't give you space to breathe, let alone score 3 tries, and if you somehow do start looking a little too flashy, coaches now pull you off at halftime to protect you for the next game. So unless World Rugby introduces a chaos mode or lets players teleport, Reinach's 11-minute demolition job is locked in for life. Most points in a calendar year. Alright, let's talk about kicking. The thing most casual fans like to pretend they understand while secretly praying the ball doesn't go near the posts. But in 1999, Neil Jenkins wasn't just kicking, he was scoring relentlessly. He racked up a ridiculous 263 points for Wales in 1 calendar year. That's not just topping the charts, that's breaking the meter. And this wasn't some random stat cooked up in a pub quiz either. Jenkins was clinical, consistent, and cool under pressure. He didn't care if it was a friendly against Tonga or a World Cup decider. If there were points to be had, Jenkins was getting them. Conversions, penalties, drop goals. He had the full toolbox, and he used every bit of it, and guess what? Nobody's come close since. Johnny Wilkinson gave it a go in 2003, and you'd think that was his year. After all, he's a World Cup winner, and his boot was like a bazooka, but even Wilkinson fell short. He managed 233 points, which is absolutely impressive, but that's still 30 shy of Jenkins. That's not a small gap. That's the kind of margin that makes other kickers sigh and give up. Now, you may think someone could just play more matches and beat it, but it's not that simple. Players today are rotated more than DJ decks at a summer festival. Coaches manage workload and rest star players to avoid burnout. And with modern defences so sharp, scoring chances are rarer than a forward passing up a burger. Jenkins, on the other hand, had the perfect cocktail. He had a busy test calendar, the reliability to start almost every game, and a golden boot that practically printed points. Add a Rugby World Cup into the mix and boom, you've got 263. So unless we suddenly go back to the 90s or World Rugby allows players to play 25 tests a year, Jenkins is sitting pretty. Most matches without scoring a try. Alright, let's talk about a rugby record that's kind of impressive and heartbreaking at the same time. We're talking about playing 108 test matches and scoring 0 tries. Yes, 0. And the proud, or slightly cursed owner of that record is none other than Owen Franks. Yep, the former All Blacks loose head prop. Now you might be thinking, come on, not even one lucky bounce over the line? But no. Franks somehow spent over a decade in one of the greatest rugby teams on earth and didn't dot down once. Now before you start laughing or shaking your head, let's be fair. Franks didn't get picked for his flair. He wasn't there to do Sunny Bill offloads or goose step around wingers. He was there to scrum, tackle, carry like a truck, and do the dirty work that doesn't get replayed on highlight reels. The front row is a war zone. No one's tossing you the ball 5 metres out unless it's to crash into 4 defenders and maybe lose a tooth. Scoring a try was for the backs, or maybe a flanker sneaking around the edge. As for Franks, he debuted for New Zealand in 2009, and his impact was immediate. He packed down with his brother Ben and helped create one of the most brutal scrummaging units in modern rugby. Coaches loved him, teammates respected him, and the fans cheered when he made a bone-rattling tackle or monstered someone in a ruck, but they never got to scream his name after a try. You'd think with all the matches he played, one would have landed in his lap. A spilled ball near the line, a driving maul gone haywire, or a sneaky inside pass from a halfback. But no, that never happened. Even when the All Blacks were putting up cricket scores against Tier 2 nations, Owen somehow avoided the try line like it was lava. And just to make it even more legendary, he didn't just play a handful of games and miss out. No, this guy racked up 108 test caps. That's more than most rugby players can dream of. Most players who get to 100 caps have at least a couple of meat pies to their name, but for Owen, it was all beef and no pie. When he finally retired from the All Blacks in 2019, the jokes wrote themselves. One said, surely someone should let him score one in his farewell game? But nah, even in his last test, the rugby gods kept the try line out of reach. Now, could this record ever be broken? Technically, yes, but realistically, it's hard to see. Props these days are much more involved in attack. They're faster, stronger, and expected to score the occasional try, especially with teams using tight forwards in pick-and-go plays. Franks came from that rare breed of old-school front rowers who just wanted to hit things and scrum for a living. So yeah, 108 matches without a single try. It might not sound glamorous, but it's one of those rugby stats that makes you stop and think. It's a weird little record, but it belongs to a man who gave everything for the jersey except points. Most siblings in one international match. Alright, now this one isn't just rare, it's borderline impossible. Imagine you're on the rugby pitch and you look around, only to see your 4 brothers staring back at you. That's exactly what happened in 2014 when 5 Slovenian brothers, the Skofics, played together in the same international match. Yeah, 5, not 2. Not even 3, 5 actual siblings in one team. For real, that's not a rugby squad, that's a full-blown family reunion. So here's what went down. Slovenia was playing Bulgaria in a European Nations Cup Division 2 match, not exactly a Rugby World Cup final, but still a full international. And the 5 brothers, Archie, George, Frank, Max, and Jack Skoffics, all suited up for Slovenia. Archie, George, and Frank started the match. Max came on after 25 minutes and wasted 0 time. He scored not 1, not 2, but 3 tries. As if that wasn't cool enough, Jack joined the party in the 77th minute, meaning all 5 brothers finished the match on the field. Slovenia went on to beat Bulgaria 43-17, which means not only did they set a record, they also got the win. Can you even imagine the post-match dinner? Hey mom, we all played together, won the game, and Max scored 3 tries. How was your day? Now, this wasn't some publicity stunt either. These guys weren't just thrown together for fun. The Skofic brothers were all solid players in their own right. It just so happened that they were all eligible, all fit, and all crazy enough to take the field together. The odds of something like this happening are so ridiculously low it makes your head spin. Most families are lucky if 2 siblings play at the same time. 3 is a miracle, but 5, that's just off the charts wild. And let's be honest, this probably won't happen again. Even if you find 5 brothers who all play rugby, getting them all to national team level at the same time is like winning the lottery while being struck by lightning and riding a unicorn. It's a 1 in a million rugby fairy tale. Plus, Slovenia isn't exactly a global rugby powerhouse, which makes it even more heartwarming. They're not stacked with 50 world-class players to choose from. So when the Skofic brothers made themselves available, the coaches probably said, yeah, let's roll with it. This record doesn't just live in the history books, it lives in the hearts of anyone who's ever played rugby with a sibling, shared a muddy training pitch with family, or dreamed of turning a backyard game into something unforgettable. The Skofics made that dream real, and unless the Joneses or the DuPonts or the Whitelocks go on a major family expansion plan, this record's probably safe forever. Most international appearances as captain. Well, now let's talk about the ultimate rugby general, the one and only Richie McCaw. You may know him as the All Black legend with 2 World Cups under his belt, but here's the kicker. He captained New Zealand 110 times. That's not just leadership, that's dictatorship. But in a good way. From 2004 to 2015, Richie wore the captain's armband more than anyone else in international rugby history. It's one thing to get the job once or twice, but to keep it for over a decade in the most competitive rugby team on earth, where anything less than perfection is considered failure, that takes something special. Now, being a captain in rugby isn't just about walking out first and shaking hands with the ref. It means you have to lead every team talk, fire up the boys when they're flat, make tough calls on penalties, and somehow keep your head when 80,000 fans are screaming. And McCaw, he made it look easy. Calm under pressure, brutal at the breakdown, and always 2 steps ahead. Let's not forget the results. While captaining the All Blacks, McCaw won 97 of his 110 games. That's an 88% win rate. Most coaches would sell their kidneys for that kind of record. He also led New Zealand to back-to-back World Cup wins in 2011 and 2015, becoming the first man in history to do so. And the craziest part? He was never flashy. He didn't run like Jonah Lomu or kick like Dan Carter. Richie's superpower was his brain and his work ethic. He tackled everything that moved, got up, and did it again. For real, he'd get to rucks faster than most people get out of bed. Other great captains have come and gone. Think Martin Johnson, Sia Khaleesi, and Sam Warburton, Brian O'Driscoll. But none came close to wearing the armband as often or winning as much while doing it. McCaw was basically the All Blacks' spiritual leader and on-field manager rolled into one. Now, could someone beat this record? Well, maybe, but it's looking highly unlikely. International rugby these days is brutal. Players don't last as long, and captains change more often than haircut trends. There's also injuries, burnout, competition, and the insane pressure of leadership that makes it nearly impossible to stick around for that long. So unless someone shows up who's half cyborg and immune to fatigue, Richie McCaw's record is going to remain unbroken, because it's not just about being tough, it's about being trusted by coaches, respected by players, and feared by opponents for over a decade. That's what makes this one of the most untouchable records in rugby. Fastest try ever. Imagine this. The referee blows the whistle, the game kicks off, fans are still finding their seats, some poor guy is halfway through his first beer, and boom, Tyson Lewis has already scored. And all it took was 7.24 seconds, yes. That's how long it took him to get from kickoff to try time. That's not just fast, that's practically impossible. It all went down in 2013. in an English third-tier National League 1 match between Doncaster Knights and Old Albanians. Now, this wasn't some blockbuster Six Nations game or a World Cup final, but Tyson Lewis turned it into one of rugby's most unforgettable moments anyway. The ball was kicked off, it bounced awkwardly over the head of the Old Albanians player, and Lewis just rocketed past everyone like someone had promised him free sandwiches at the try line. He didn't just beat a man to the ball, he beat the clock, because it takes longer to tie your boots than it took Lewis to score. Some fans hadn't even looked up from their phones yet. It's officially the fastest try in rugby union history, and the Guinness World Records folks were kind enough to stamp it. Now, in case you're wondering if anyone has come close, the answer is not really. Some have tried the old kick off and hope for chaos tactic, but nobody's managed to replicate the perfect storm of lucky bounce, sleepy defenders, and sheer acceleration that made Tyson Lewis a cult legend that day. And let's be honest, with kick-off teams now drilled like military units and fullbacks ready to mop up any mistake, you're not likely to see someone score that quickly again, unless they parachute directly onto the ball. So next time you're late turning on a match, just remember, Tyson Lewis would have already finished the job before you even found the remote. But which of these unbreakable rugby records do you think will eventually get smashed? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, there's plenty more rugby videos in the works. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.